Chapter 1. Beginnings. At the end of 1978, a young woman discovered she was pregnant. "Dear God," she prayed, "please don't give me a disabled child. You know I wouldn't be able to cope." In May 1979, her baby was born. Gazing down at the healthy child she held in her arms, she realised that God had answered her prayer. She looked up and whispered, "Thank you." The woman was my mother. The baby was me. One of my earliest memories is of a giant, or so he seemed to me. 3 things about my grandpa: he was tall, he was kind, and he wore corduroy trousers. Whenever I was afraid or hurt, I would toddle as fast as I could to wrap myself around a corduroy-clad leg. I would bury my face in it, shut out the world, and immediately feel better. This sense of security and acceptance summed up my life. Within 8 years, I had 3 younger sisters and lived in a fun, chaotic, noisy, supportive, faith-filled home. To me, life was idyllic, and I had no reason to imagine it otherwise. I was 5 years old when my parents decided to follow a family tradition by sending me for piano lessons. I remember sitting on the piano stool, legs swinging, feet that didn't touch the floor, little fingers that could hardly span the keys, but that would grow to span an octave plus 3 notes, something of which I would be very proud. I loved playing the piano, but I wanted to play pieces I wanted to play, not the exercises my teacher gave me to practice at home. But that was okay. After a quick half-hour at the piano before I went to my lesson, I was able to play the exercises, and my teacher never knew that I didn't practice much. Or so I thought. When I was 8, the teacher took my mum aside and told her that I could go far if only I'd practice. My teacher recognised my potential. My mum, reluctant to make music a chore, recognised my need to enjoy it. Put it this way, I never reached my potential, but I certainly enjoyed it. Being able to play the piano led to the continuation of another family tradition, musical concerts. Every Christmas and birthday party included an impromptu concert. The range of instruments expanded as the family grew, and the musicians would perform for a supposedly appreciative but definitely captive audience of the adults in the family. My grandparents' house had a large balcony halfway up the stairs, a perfect stage to showcase our talents. Soon my sisters and I were not only making music, but were writing, directing and starring in our own plays, roping in our 2 cousins to join in the fun. As the years went on, the quality of music and acting improved. When our great-aunt and uncle celebrated their golden wedding, extended family and friends joined them for lunch, after which, at their request, musical entertainment was given by various guests. I coordinated our family's contribution, but my cousin Toby had a dilemma. He really wanted to do something for his aunt and uncle, but at only 5 years of age, he was too nervous to do it. So in the days leading up to the lunch, I told him I would accompany his singing, and we practised and practised. The day came, and he did it. He stood in front of everyone and sang so beautifully. I can remember it as though it were yesterday. I can also remember the sense of satisfaction I felt at seeing him achieve. There are educators on both sides of my family, and it looked as though I would be joining them. God has always been central to everyday life for me. I grew up going to church, and it was great. Church was fun. I learned about a God who loves me more than anything. I learned exciting stories about whales and lions from the Bible, and I had freedom to explore. There was a big hall in the building, and after the service we kids would make a network of roads with the chairs and push each other along them on the caretaker's wheeled chair trolley, racing to find the quickest route from one side to the other. If the weather was good, we would play outside, making dens and climbing trees. One day when I was about 11, we found some skipping ropes. We started skipping on the gravel path, faster and faster. All of a sudden I tripped and landed on my chin, splitting it open. It dripped a lot of blood, but the cut was easily stitched up at the hospital, and my parents and I thought no more of it. Looking back, that fall may have been a warning sign, but we didn't know it deserved attention. Mum introduced me to music, and Dad introduced me to sport. He loved running, and so, I discovered, did I. It became a regular thing for Dad and me to put on our running shoes and go for a run round the local park together, him slowing his pace and encouraging me to keep going. When I was 7, I joined the school cross-country team, and Saturday mornings in winter became race mornings. Me running the race and Dad shivering by the home straight, cheering me on, a routine that continued for years. One of my best friends also loved running, and as we got older, she replaced my dad on some of my runs round the park. The fact that Claire would be there certainly made getting up early for a race on a Saturday morning much easier. One of these mornings, when we were about 12, she came to call for me so we could head to the race together. I heard the doorbell and hurried to answer it, but as I neared the door, I tripped. I put my hand out to stop me from falling. My hand did break my fall, but it also broke the glass in the front door. Like a scene out of a horror movie, Claire saw a bloody hand break through glass. My little sisters were deposited with Claire's mum. My dad, rather than driving me to the race, sped me to the hospital. My mum sat beside me in the car, clenching a tea towel round my wrist in an attempt to stem the bleeding. Again, the hospital stitched me up. Though this cut was more serious than the one on my chin, it had nearly severed an artery. Again, had we been looking, this fall may have been a warning sign. But we weren't looking. So I was patched up and life carried on. At the age of 9, I began taking ballroom dancing lessons. There was a definite shortage of boys in the dance school, so because I am tall, I often ended up dancing the male part. Except for in the exams. Then I was very much the girl, twirling and waltzing around the large room reserved especially for such occasions. It was wonderful. I'd loved the music, the elegance, the intricate footwork, the grace. Our teacher, Desney, always partnered us during these exams, which for me was interesting, to say the least. Her head didn't reach my shoulder, which made dancing elegantly under her arm rather a challenge. Years later, I discovered that Desney was inwardly a bit concerned when I stopped being able to dance a certain step, the fan. I would lose my balance every time I attempted it. I had no problem dancing everything else, so naturally, Desney kept quiet. Another warning sign that went unheeded. I have something of a horsey heritage on my mother's side. Her father, he of the corduroy trousers, greatly enjoyed riding and would often take my mum for a hack. When she left home, Mum no longer rode, but she still loved horses, something which she passed on to me. I didn't ride much either, but always wanted to. The summer I was 12, I was enrolled on a daily riding course for a whole week. This was a big deal, partly because I would finally get to ride, but more because of the expense. With 4 children, money was tight in our house, and yet my parents managed to scrape together enough for me to go. I had a great week. Over dinner every night I would give my family minute-by-minute accounts of all I'd done. I talked about the grooming, the saddling up, the cantering, the jumping, but I never mentioned the bullying. The bullying started on day 1 and it baffled me. I wasn't rude to anyone. I didn't hurt anyone. I kept myself to myself, so why pick on me? As well as being baffled, I was hurting. Those bullies were really mean. Every day they goaded me, taunted me, pushed me. But I didn't tell anyone. How could I? My parents had saved so hard for me to ride, so I kept the bullying to myself. I didn't tell my family that I was greeted with "Shut the door in front of you" when I started to board the bus that took my group from the drop-off point to the stables. I didn't tell them that no one would sit with me on the bus. I didn't tell them that I dreaded getting to the stables. I just told them that I loved being there. Basically, I started compartmentalising. I would have imaginary boxes in my mind and choose which one to focus on. I still thought about the bullying. Of course I did, but only sometimes. The rest of the time I did my best to keep the bullying lid firmly on the box and focus on the horse box instead. This ability to compartmentalise has proved invaluable in my life, particularly when circumstances threaten to overwhelm me. As well as enjoying sport and music, I enjoyed school. I loved learning, except for maths. Numeracy was never my thing, much to the despair of my maths teacher father. Apart from maths, I was in that rather strange group of people who are actually pleased when the teacher announces an exam, relishing the opportunity to test myself. When I was 14, I began studying for my GCSE exams, alongside playing in the school band and orchestra, and being a member of various sports teams, running, hockey, gymnastics. During one gymnastics competition, I slipped off the balance beam, ending up in hospital again. I didn't really mind not being able to complete the competition. I was too tall to be a good gymnast anyway, and had only really been put on the team to make up numbers. But that slip was another unheeded warning sign. Around this time I joined a Philharmonic youth choir, which was being established in my city. I had sung in choirs and singing groups from an early age, but this one was different. We sang a wide range of musical genre to a very high standard. We performed in amazing places and concert halls. We sang in competitions and we went on trips. One of these excursions was an outing to London. Our current repertoire involved songs from Andrew Lloyd Webber's Starlight Express, so it was a great excuse for us to go to see the show. And what a show it was! I remember being particularly amazed by the cast whizzing around on roller skates, up and down the aisles amongst the audience. One of the songs contains the lyrics, "There's a light at the end of the tunnel." As I sat in the theatre and listened, I had no idea that I was soon to enter a very dark tunnel indeed, let alone whether there was light at the end. Life was busy and I enjoyed it that way. My increasing ability to compartmentalise was proving useful in getting on with living. I was learning to put the lid on the box, which contained the headache that I'd begun to experience all of the time, making it fairly easy to ignore in the main. The fact that my balance had become quite bad became a joke between my friends and me as we walked to school, me walking in a wobbly line, and them good-naturedly teasing me about being drunk at 8 in the morning. Of course, had we known it, the headaches and loss of balance were warning signs, but we didn't know it, so life carried on. Over the next 6 months or so, amidst the busyness, my headaches and balance continued to worsen. I went to see my GP and he gave me medication for migraine, which didn't help. So I went back and he gave me something different, which didn't help. So I went back. He suggested I might be stressed because of my GCSEs. This nonplussed me a bit. I loved the adrenaline rush of exams. So he gave me different medication, and different, every time I went back. I think I must have tried every migraine tablet on the market, red, yellow, blue, but nothing helped. When I was 15, between visits to the GP, I went with the school on an outward bound trip to Wales. It was a fantastic time, walking and rock climbing, abseiling and tunnelling, caving, canoeing and whitewater rafting. The trip lasted for 5 days, and it wasn't until the day before we came home that we went for a hike, which included going through tunnels and caves. I was absolutely fine walking along with my now usual slightly wobbly gait. We approached a cave and entered it, bending low but still able to be on our feet. The light from the entrance shone in, so we could see where we were going. But then we rounded a corner and the light disappeared. Everything went pitch black. Suddenly I could no longer stay upright. Every time I tried to walk, I literally fell over. In the end, my teacher had to half carry, half drag me out of the cave. As soon as I was back in the light, however, I could walk. Yet another warning sign that went unnoticed as life carried on.